Hello everybody and welcome to That's Football. Some massive breaking sad news in a footballing sense for football, but mainly for Newcastle. We saw it at the weekend in the Newcastle-Manchester United game. This has got big ramifications for Manchester United and Arsenal as well, especially in light of how Raya played last night, Ramsdale to Newcastle. Well, it's been confirmed by Eddie Howe that Nick Pope will be out for 4 months. 4 months as he has to face surgery on his injured, I believe it's his shoulder, isn't it? Or something like that. So, look, I mean, it could be a season ender. It's the middle of, well, it's not quite the middle of December, but December, February, what? December, January, February, March, end of March would be start of April, I suppose, when Nick Pope comes back. The ramifications for that for Nick Pope, and we wish him all the best. I think he's been fantastic in the Champions League, especially for Newcastle this season, but he's been a really good signing for them. And, you know, the way he went down, it was just so innocuous as well. You wish him well in his recovery. But as we've seen with many players this season, injury has a major impact. And we've seen it with Spurs, we've seen it with United, Chelsea, De Bruyne at Man City. Arsenal had it with Timber as well and a few others. So injuries are having a big part to play in the modern game, as we've seen. And football carries on, is what I'm trying to say. So what do Newcastle do now? Because I'll tell you what, we saw it at the weekend with Liverpool and Alisson missing out, Kelleher coming in. I don't think he's a bad goalkeeper, but he's not Alisson. And I think that's the most important thing here. Depravka can probably come in and do a job. Newcastle are not the Newcastle of a couple of years ago where someone coming in and doing a job is okay. Newcastle are trying to get into the top 4, maybe stay in the Champions League. And with Nick Pope not in goal, that's a huge drop-off. Now, Eddie Howe has said that, you know, they've not made any contact with anybody at the moment, but there's 2 massive options here for Newcastle that they should be all over it, like custard on apple crumble. They've got to get on this, because David De Gea and Ramsdale are 2 goalkeepers that are not playing, who last season were 2 of the better goalkeepers in the league. David De Gea won the Golden Glove last year, and Ramsdale, I believe, was competing with him for it. Well, they're both available, and Newcastle have got the money, and I think they've just got to go and do that. And it would hurt a lot, and I'm sure a lot of United fans would agree with me, that David De Gea going to Newcastle would feel very, very odd. But I wouldn't have got rid of David De Gea from Manchester United anyway, so I had nothing to do with it. Most Man United fans would feel the same. Manchester United decided to get rid of David De Gea, and he's a free agent, and I can't imagine as a free agent there is anything preventing him from going to another Premier League club. And for Newcastle and for David De Gea for 6 months, this could be a fantastic deal. He'll get good wages. He gives Newcastle exactly what they need. I think it's an absolute no-brainer, which is probably why it won't happen, but I think it is. And then on the other hand, you've got Ramsdale, who desperately needs a move. I mean, look, I wake up this morning, I don't know what your thoughts are. And can I just say as well, make sure you check out the new podcast. I've dropped the link in the description. I'm going to talk about what we talk about on that podcast, but it's a fantastic episode this week, talking about lots and lots of things. Specifically this new TV deal. We go into depth with that and what a mess it is, but I'll give you a little bit of a hint about what that is in a minute. But just bringing it back to the goalkeeper situation for Newcastle, what would you do? What would you do if you were Newcastle? What would you do if you're a Newcastle fan? What would you do if you're not a Newcastle fan? Because for me, David De Gea is the one I'd go and get. Newcastle can afford it. He's not going to cost you any money. He's a very experienced goalkeeper. You know, he's nowhere near retirement, really. He's still in his early 30s. You're not necessarily replacing Nick Pope as well. You just get David De Gea on a short-term deal and say, let's see how it is at the end of the season. You protect Nick Pope there, who deserves that. Yeah, all round, it's a logical thing to do. On the other hand, you've got Ramsdale. Now, last night in the Luton game, Raya made a couple of mistakes. This morning in the UK, on the radio, online, you can see people saying Ramsdale this, Ramsdale that. I heard some Pratt talking about how this is on Arteta because he's got 2 goalkeepers who don't know what's going on. And I just look at it and I go, I mean, everybody knows what's going on. Arteta replaced Ramsdale with Raya, and Raya is his number 1. That's what's going on. So Ramsdale needs to make a move. Now, will Arsenal want to let Ramsdale go to Newcastle? And, well, I don't know. I don't know, but you've got to be knocking on the door as someone like Aaron Ramsdale and saying, you're not picking me you're clearly not going to pick me. I don't think you've treated me that well because I thought I was a good goalkeeper for you, but I respect the fact that you've replaced me. You want Raya in goal. Can you not respect the fact that you haven't treated me that well and let me go and play for Newcastle? Because I need to play football. And if Arsenal said, no, you're not going to a rival, I'd really start to feel for Ramsdale then, because I'd be like, well, you know, you kicked him in the nuts taking a place that he thought was his, and now you're not letting him go and play football. But look, this is what contracts are signed for, and Arsenal might just say, absolutely not, under no circumstances. But on the other hand, it might work in Arsenal's favour, as we spoke about earlier in the week, where Arsenal could say, well, you won't play against us, and if you play well against rivals, look, Newcastle with Dubravka in goal against Man City and Liverpool, and Newcastle with Ramsdale in goal against Man City and Liverpool are a better team, and Arsenal might look at it like that. So look, which way would you go? Get in the comments if you're Newcastle. Would you go De Gea or would you go Ramsdale? I'd go Ramsdale because I don't want De Gea to go to Newcastle, but if I'm actually talking about goalkeeping, I'd go De Gea. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it goes, and you've got to feel that, look, Newcastle are not the only club in this situation, but the way that they've been playing recently with all the injuries, they just really could have done without that, and I think Nick Pope's going to be a big miss for them, and it may well start this weekend with their game against Spurs as well. It'd be very difficult for Newcastle. The thing about Newcastle is, though, they've got the January transfer window 3 or 4 weeks away, and we know they've got very good links into Saudi, so there could be some options for them there, of course. Is there any good goalkeepers in Saudi that they could loan in? Mendy went there, didn't he, from Chelsea, I think. Maybe that's one to keep an eye on as well. Yes, podcast. I was going to do a video on this, but then I thought, well, it's mainly on the podcast and people could go and listen to the podcast about it. This new TV deal that's happening with the Premier League to 2029, I think it's a bad thing. I think it's a bad thing. Obviously, we've had Amazon Prime Week this week, and we've seen how it works with the streaming service, with all the games on at the same time. I really want to see this. I really want to see this. I really want to see the technology and mainly the availability of Premier League games. We pay so much money in the UK. We pay so much money. You pay TNT, you pay Sky, and you still don't get all the games. And we also pay Amazon Prime as well for their games that they do. So it's incredible because in other countries, as I understand it, you get one pass, all games. And in the UK, we don't get all the games and we have to pay for 3 different passes. It's ridiculous. And the Premier League signing this till 2029 and patting themselves on the back, well, yeah, you're going to make a lot of money. The clubs are going to make a lot of money, but the fans don't. The fans are not getting the service they should be getting in 2023, and we're aware of the 3 p.m. blackout as well. We've just spoken about injuries. We're getting more injuries, which means diluted content, and we're paying more for it over the next 6 years. It's just not, it's not good enough, I think. I think it's not good enough. But anyway, we go into real depth about that on the podcast. Check it out, Goldbridge Saves Football, links in the description, and join the podcast movement. It's going really well, and you're very welcome on there. Also, we've got our Either Ors, our Pratt of the Week on there, talking about the title race as well. Lots to get your teeth into. And I tell you what, if you can guess who Will gave me to guess from 5 clues on this week's podcast, you're better than me. I just had no chance with that. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching. Make sure you smash a like on the video. Remember, we've got win, lose or draw back with Ben Foster tomorrow. It's a bumper one covering this week's Premier League games and the weekend Premier League games. It'll make sense when you see it tomorrow. And I'm on United Stand tonight for Chelsea against Manchester United with an eye on Man City versus Aston Villa. Take care, everyone. Get your comments in below on the goalkeeper situation at Newcastle, and I'll speak to you soon.